America's modern healthcare system is anything but modern. The absurd cost of insurance, doctor's visits, and prescription medication means most people don't go to the doctor when they need to. The Consumer Finance and Protection Bureau estimates that around 100 million Americans have medical debt, totaling $220 billion. Most of this debt is concentrated in the South and in lower income communities. In Appalachia, as with most of rural America, the problem goes beyond cost. Adequate health care remains inaccessible to most rural communities. I'll use myself as an example. I'm healthy now, but I was born with a complicated heart condition. Each year, I have to see a cardiologist for a checkup. When I was growing up, we had to travel 2.5 hours to see my cardiologist, and that meant a few things. My parents had to take the day off work to get me there. They had to pay for the gas to get me there. Sometimes, if the appointment was early in the morning, it meant we had to get a hotel to stay in the night before. I would miss a day of school. So would my sister usually. My parents had to feed us both. One visit to the doctor really added up, and that was before we ever got the bill for the cost of care. Medicare for all is a popular mantra now, but there was a woman from Greasy Creek, Kentucky that I consider a leader in the fight for health justice. I had the pleasure of speaking with Cara Ellis, a founder of Pikeville Pride and someone that also directly benefited from her work. Please join us as we talk about the life and legacy of Eula Hall. Okay, Cara.
Yes.
We're here to talk about Eula Hall.
Yes.
Who we both, I'm from Floyd County, so I have always known of Eula Hall and Mud Creek Clinic and everything that she did. And you actually have some personal experience.
I do, yes. So I, as a kid growing up, would go to Mud Creek Clinic for healthcare. So I come from like a really working class background, but unfortunately, like most families in Eastern Kentucky, we didn't have healthcare or health insurance. And so I would have to go to Mud Creek Clinic for those needs. And I wouldn't say I know Eula really well, but I knew her because of going there. And there's actually, my mom somewhere has a picture of me sitting on Eula's lap. And she's like behind her desk and we're filling out paperwork because they did a sliding scale payment form.
Yeah.
So I remember that part of Eula, and I went there for many years. I would say from the time I was 4 until I was a teenager for healthcare. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So like well into the probably early 2000s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like those that have heard of Eula before, it's like she started Mud Creek Clinic. She gave healthcare to everybody. Like she was a huge advocate for universal healthcare, and she wanted to make sure everyone was taken care of. As I was reading into her history, it was just like all these themes of her life that I think everyone in Appalachia can relate to, and especially women. One of the stories that I read, and I think I maybe talked to you a little bit about, was her mother. She saw her mother give birth when Eula was 6 years old, and her mother was giving birth to one of her siblings. This was before you could get to a hospital. They didn't have a clinic. I think this was like the 1940s, and they were up a holler. You know, if you don't know, a holler is so isolated.
Yes.
Like so deeply isolated, it's hard to really explain it to someone that's never been in a holler.
Yeah.
And I think even especially where Eula was at the time, Greasy Creek.
Yes.
So she sees her mom giving birth. Her mom ends up giving birth. The baby's stillborn. But and her mom suffered through so much trauma trying to give birth and lost a lot of blood. It was like Eula carried that with her whole life, I think, because that sort of led to her being like, why can't people in my community get the care that they need?
Reading some articles about Eula in preparation for this, one of my favorite quotes that she gave was like, you know, in a land of plenty, why are people suffering?
Right.
And I think that like the story that you were talking about with seeing that, you know, having that stillbirth in her family, like she did carry that with her. And of course, that was a motivator for her to, you know, to bring healthcare access to so many people in Eastern Kentucky.
And I think, you know, she saw her mother have that horrible experience with childbirth. And then she also had some of her own experience with childbirth that was not great. She was giving birth in her own house, which people did for years and can still do. I think now it's like fashionable. But when there's complications, not having the ability to get somewhere to get the help that you need was a huge deal.
Yes.
Especially in those years. So that was just something that stuck out to me. It's like how much that one instance affected her and probably her whole life's course, what she did and what she advocated for.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Besides that, just reading some of Eula's about her earlier life, it was she loved school. She loved to learn. She loved actually being able to go to school because she wasn't able to do that until she was a little bit older. When she wasn't able to go to school anymore, I think she graduated 8th grade, and it was during World War II, and she was sent.
Yes, I do love this story. So.
She was sent to, well, she wasn't necessarily sent. She signed up herself. She lied about her age.
Which was common back then.
Yeah,
a lot of people did it.
She was 15, and she told an Army recruiter that she was 18. They were just recruiting people at the mouth of her holler. She decided that she wanted to go on an adventure. They sent her to New York, and not New York City. It was like Ontario, New York, to work in a canning factory. And why don't you tell people what happened?
So she was arrested for inciting a labor riot. And I don't know a lot of this, like, parts of the story. Like, I know moving parts of it. But I just think that speaks to her character. It's not something that I think a lot of people know about her because they always see like the healthcare side and all the good that she's done with that. But this woman is like done so many different things. And she was such an advocate for workers' rights. I definitely think that's something that not a lot of people, when they talk about Eula, they've really touched on. Is just like, yeah, okay, the healthcare thing that was like revolutionary, especially in Eastern Kentucky. But this woman was fighting for all of us. And it was like, especially the working class. Again, going back to that quote, like in the land of plenty, why are people suffering?
Right.
And you could probably speak more to the story of like how she actually got arrested, but I do know that part. And I'm just like, yes, I love that.
I think it was, she said herself she was inspired by the fights that she saw the Union fighting back home.
Yeah, coal mining and
yeah. And she was like, we can do that here.
Yeah.
We have horrible working conditions. But she was going up against the government, which is, you know, this was not like a coal company. This was the United States government. So it didn't last that long.
No, she did get arrested.
She did get arrested for inciting a riot.
And can you imagine being 15? You've already lied about your age to get where you are in a completely different part of the country. And then you get arrested. Can you imagine being 15 and getting arrested for something like that?
Yeah,
like,
I think the charges were actually dropped.
They were,
because they were like, you're 15 years old.
Yeah.
And they just sent her back home. And she was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be doing that then.
Yeah. But I'll be doing other things. Don't worry.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Things will be happening.
Yeah. I'm still going to be organizing. This is just my jumping point.
Exactly. And that's sort of, that felt like, you know, her jumping point for organizing and understanding how that whole system works.
Yes.
I think that, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, but I do think that people from Appalachia already have sort of, we know in our bones how important community is.
Yes.
And how important it is to take care of community. And I think that's something that Eula had with her whole life. That is essentially what organizing is and what mutual aid is. But we didn't really have a term for it. It's just like, that's just what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like something that's always been instilled in me from like, you know, my grandparents and just being in Appalachia. Like, you have to take care of one another because we have so few resources. We have to lean on one another.
I think it's the isolationism.
Yes.
Your holler or your town or your county is your community. And you know that these are the people that are going to be there for you when you actually need them.
And a lot of people, I think when we talk about that too, with organizing work, they think it's like, oh, it's just your family helping other members of your family. And it's like,
right.
These aren't people that are directly like blood related to you. Like, we treat everyone like they are our family. So I think that's always really important to touch on.
Yeah. And I think that's sort of Eula's approach. My community is my family, and I don't want to see anyone go without.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is part of her story that sort of gets lost when you talk about her, is like her original roots. Everyone knows that she did so much for healthcare, but what was she doing before?
Right.
when she eventually, she was doing this sort of mutual aid work in her community, in her holler, and then she got into what we would think of as modern day organizing and working with a group. And she worked with the EKWRO, the Eastern Kentucky Welfare Rights Organization.
Yes.
And that's sort of like where she really came to prominence. I was reading in a book, and she was sort of like having this. It was based on an interview with her. She was like, "What is the thing I want to focus on? What is it that we need?" And she would go like, "We need better jobs. We need better labor rights. We need all these things, but none of this is going to matter. Like all of this relates to healthcare.
Yes.
All of it intersects at healthcare." And that is sort of where her fight for that really began.
And I think it's interesting too, because like she was intersectional before there was like even that term was coined.
Right.
And she's just like, this is so like related, and everything has, it's all together. Like we can keep fighting for, better wages, better working conditions, again, and better health care.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think kind of is in this timeline of like her organizing work is that she also helped start like part of the water district in Mud Creek. So she was fighting for access to clean water, which we're still fighting for, of course, and all these other issues. But yeah, she's done a lot of tremendous work that just wasn't strictly about healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't have clean water, then you don't have healthy people. This is just a sidebar. They used to put bleach in the water because they were like, that's cleaning the water.
Yeah.
And that's cleaning the creek.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay. Wild. Anyway.
I wish that were how it worked.
Oh my God, if that's how it worked, you could rename this town Clorox.
Yeah, yeah. Don't give them any ideas. They'll probably try to do it.
You're probably right. You're probably right. Anyway, so she started doing this work with EKWRO, and that's sort of where she like realized that you can get paid to be an organizer.
Yes.
And she was actually getting a paycheck. Eula was married. She was married twice. Her first marriage was notoriously awful.
Yes.
Abusive.
Yeah. A lot of really dark stuff that happened.
There was a lot, and what she realized was she was not the only woman that was experiencing this. As she started working with other women and trying to figure out what their needs were, that was another thing she was doing, was like these community scans.
Yeah.
Which I guess is what we would call it now. But she was just going door to door, house to house, trying to figure out, what do you need?
Yeah.
I guess we would call it a community assessment scan now.
Yeah, like a canvassing type situation. Yeah.
Right. She was doing that just to figure out what is going to make people's lives better.
Yes.
So she was doing all this, and she noticed that women, if their husbands were home, the women would sometimes be really quiet and not say anything. But if their husbands weren't home, they had a laundry list of things that would make that would make everything better.
Yeah.
That's when she really realized, like, I'm not the only one living in an abusive marriage. I know there are other people like me that need help. Other women like me that need help and assistance. I just like to think about how she was balancing these two worlds of like her home life with her husband was really awful and violent. But on the other hand, she thought it could always be worse. It could always be worse.
And that's something that I've always drawn on when I've like read about her in different ways, whether it's like been books or articles, is that like there's this woman who was pouring so much of herself into her community. And a lot of times, when something's really bad happening at home, a lot of us, and I'm very much this person, sometimes I turn inward. I want to like focus on so much of the bad that's happening to me personally. But she didn't stop. Like she was out there like, I have all this going on at home, but I want to help more people. And I think that is very much a testament to her character.
Yeah.
Yeah. She drew her strength from the community in helping the community.
And as she was helping people and making all these connections, what she was actually doing was like creating sort of a family outside of her own family.
Yes.
I mean, of course, she had her children that she loved, but she also had, an activist who became, fellow activists, I should say, who became family.
Yes.
Or someone that she helped that she knew would have her back no matter what.
Yes.
And that's what true community, I think, looks like. Let's talk a little bit about Mud Creek Clinic.
I would love to.
Okay. So it started out of a trailer.
Yes. A trailer. And I think they said they had like $1,400 in donations to get this started. So they didn't have like nonprofit status yet, anything like that. It was just, again, the community pulling in. They already saw her doing all this like activist and advocating work. And they believed in her and said, okay, yeah, this is what we can pull together to help you. So $1,400 in a trailer.
Yeah. And I think it was a trailer that was on just a piece of property that they bought. It wasn't, she was still with her first husband at the time. It wasn't something that like she went out and got.
Yeah.
It was just there.
I think it was an abandoned trailer, if I'm not mistaken, just like on this abandoned piece of property.
Yeah, it was totally abandoned. And she's like, we could make a health clinic out of that.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So she started this clinic out of a trailer and they started to see hundreds of patients.
Yeah, like instantly.
Instantly, because the need was there.
Yes.
And she knew that the need was there. By this time in the 70s, you know, you could drive to the hospital, you could go to a local clinic, but it was really the frustration of when I go to the clinic, they're just referring me to the hospital and nobody can pay that hospital bill.
Yeah, it was still a lot of them were cash payments. So you had to cash up front to be able to have services.
Yeah, and that was quite impossible for a lot of folks. So that's really why this clinic was started. There were hospitals at this time. There were clinics at this time. But normal people could not afford this care.
Yes. And I think another thing, too, is that, you know, transportation was still such a barrier to getting to these places. So, like, if you're already in an isolated holler in a community, you have to drive 45 minutes, an hour, maybe sometimes longer just to get to a hospital to have care. So I think it was just like the, you know, ability to not have health care wasn't just, you know, a payment thing. It was so many different obstacles and barriers that really led to her being like, I'm going to establish this here in Mud Creek.
Mud Creek, for those that don't know, is still pretty isolated.
Very isolated, yes.
It's still a very isolated community. So imagine when in the 70s, Eula's like, we have a health clinic now.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay for care.
Yes. It's still like on a 2-lane road. So imagine back then, I'm sure it was still a 2-lane road, but like barely a 2-lane road. Like I'm trying to picture it in my head now and remembering going there as a kid. And I was just like, back then it was even bad trying to get there as a kid. But I can't imagine like actually when it got started, like how the infrastructure was and how hard it was even to access if you weren't already within that community. So
right. But what's interesting about that is because people knew that you could get care for free.
They came from everywhere.
They came from everywhere.
Multiple states, yeah.
I read a piece, someone as far as northern Georgia came to Mud Creek Clinic to get care.
I've heard stories like that too.
Because it was free.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
And you were never turned away.
Never.
Never. It did not matter anything. You were never, ever turned away from services.
That was sort of her whole creed.
Yeah.
We're never going to turn you away.
That, and also she's spoken about like everybody that came through those doors was going to be respected.
Yes.
And I think respect was a big thing with Eula too, is that like no matter what, nobody's going to look down on you, not even the healthcare workers. Because again, there was a lot of bias against people who were in poverty and needed these services, you know, not only being turned away because you couldn't pay, but just being looked down upon. And she was always adamant about you're going to be respected, you're going to be cared for.
A lot of this was post-war on poverty, and some people had some really harsh feelings about the success of the war on poverty. She knew that. She knew that people had ill feelings about the region and the people within the region. An interesting thing for me, how she chose the doctors that were going to come work in her clinic.
Yes.
I'm really interested to hear about your experience if you remember it. One of the avenues that she took to hiring doctors was through Catholic charities.
Yeah. I know that they were volunteer doctors. Of course, she didn't have the money to pay them. So these are people that were like she vetted through, like you said, the Catholic, like I guess you could say healthcare system within that. And yeah, I remember my doctor when I went at the time. His name was Dr. Safula, and he was wonderful. And again, I still think even back then, this would have been in the early 90s, mid 90s, all the way up to like 2000s. I think he probably didn't get paid much to be there. So, I mean, these are people that really saw in her vision giving people access to healthcare and really might not have been necessarily from the community, but became a part of the community.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was a big thing for her too. If you're going to work here, you need to understand how important community is in this area.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah. And I think she probably pressed people too to be part of the community just outside of even the clinic. Like I would see, Dr. Safula, like baseball games, basketball games, different parts of like just activities and things. So I think she was like really big on making sure that like those people did become integrated in the community.
A lot of people come to Appalachia with really good intentions.
Yes.
But they don't always know how to become part of a place.
Yes.
Because you have to understand if you're not from here, people are a little, whether rightly or wrongly, people are a little suspicious. And that's because of years of extraction. And I think knowing that and coming in with the best intentions will make people's experience a lot better. This is another thing we could preach on for days.
Yeah, we could talk about this for a long time.
This could be a whole episode. I think she intrinsically knew people weren't maybe going to trust every doctor or every person that they didn't know coming into the clinic. And she wanted people to feel safe and feel cared for in many ways. You talked a little bit before about she knew these things were intersectional before we really had the term intersectional applied.
Yeah.
I think that her approach to healthcare was similar because she really cared about the whole person.
Yes, she did.
You could go, there was a food pantry on site. I think there still is.
There still is a food pantry. There was a dental clinic that's still on site. I've actually had dental care there as an adult. The food pantry, the dental clinic, a like clothing bank. There was the pharmacy on site. There was the lab on site. So like you weren't just going there for maybe like minor illnesses technically and maybe referred out to somewhere else. Like it was all encompassing there. And like you said, it was really caring about the well-being, the whole part of it.
Yeah. And she also, outside of just what you came to get care for that day, she also offered education. I know she was a huge advocate of sexual education for women.
Yes.
We still struggle with that. We're getting better. But in the 70s and the 80s, there was no sexual education at all, really. I read a story about a woman coming in with her daughter, and she was like, she's hurt because she fell, and her 15-year-old daughter was actually pregnant.
Wow.
And they delivered her at Mud Creek Clinic.
Wow.
Eula helped deliver her. The baby was named after Eula.
I love that. I do love that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing story, but that was one of the things where she was like, we have got to get some sexual education to our young people. She was sort of at the forefront of all of those things. Black lung.
Oh, yes. She was president of the Kentucky Black Lung Association, which is, to think about, is almost unfathomable because, one, she was a woman. And, she was married to coal miners and, obviously grew up in that world of coal mining in Eastern Kentucky. But to be a woman in that position without, technically a medical degree. I mean, this is not somebody that is a doctor. And to be president of that blows my mind just still.
I kind of love that too, because her reaching that status just showed how much she was respected. We've gotten a little bit better about advocating for Black lung in recent years. But at this time, when Eula was president of the Kentucky Black Lung Association, I don't believe that even the wives were getting paid, getting the Black lung benefits.
They weren't. Yeah.
They were not getting Black lung benefits for their husbands that had passed.
Yeah.
And she helped advocate for that.
Yeah.
And that wasn't something that everyone really wanted, even those that were minors.
Yeah. I think that becomes part of the issue with that was like obviously the distrust of government, which it's understandable. But yeah, she was very big on, people getting Black lung benefits. And I've even read that, like, she would do a lot of, like, legal advocacy work. So, again, she wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't, like, a trained professional, but she actually represented people in court, not just with Black lung, but different things. And she won so many, like, cases just as, like, a legal representative. So, I mean, the woman put in the work in so many different avenues.
I think that legal showing up for people in that capacity is also part of this broader approach to healthcare, approach to education. These systems that we have set up are not for your average person to figure out. It's gotten even more complicated with health insurance over the years. So I think that her knowing even at that time that people were going to need more assistance to get through things, and her willing to take that time, her willing to put herself out there, is just amazing to me.
Yes. And I think for me, looking back, I think of Mud Creek Clinic not just as solely like healthcare, and we've touched on this a bunch, in this conversation, but it was more like a community center. And that's, again, just that approach to the well-being, the wholeness of the community. So many different things have happened in that building, and they've all been wonderful.
I love Eula Hall. She is an inspiration for me.
She's a saint.
She is an Appalachian saint.
Yes.
Your work sort of reminds me of Eula's work. Why don't you tell me how Pikeville Pride started?
So Pikeville Pride actually got started in April of 2017. There was like a convergence of what we would say white nationalist groups that came to Pikeville, which is my hometown, and held a march, rally, however you want to word it, like with that, in Pikeville. And we kind of took conversations from the community. There was a bunch of us meeting to have a protest of these groups coming in. And once that event was over, and some of us were there at the protest, we kind of took that momentum and said, what can we do in this community to show that this is not our hometown? This is not our Appalachia. Like, this image that's always portrayed about us as just being so like backwards and ignorant and very open to, these thoughts of white supremacy and racism and sexism. So Pikeville Pride was kind of born from that. And we had a lot of meetings as a group of us. There's like a dedicated group of, I would say, initially like 20 to 30 people, but it's kind of wound down a little bit and some people have moved away. But yeah, that's how we got started, was just what kind of statement can we make to show the diversity, the inclusion, the belonging of people in Central Appalachia, not just the LGBTQ community, but different marginalized communities. So that's how we got started.
In the way that I think of Mud Creek Clinic filling a gap, I feel like Pikeville Pride fills a gap.
Yeah, I think we absolutely have. And I mean, we've been steadily working since then, but 2018 was our first Pride event. So it was October 2018. We don't do our Pride event during Pride Month because we don't want to compete with other Prides that are going on across the state. But yeah, our first event, we had like 500 people show up, which blew our expectations completely. We're like, if we get 10 people to show up, we're going to be happy. And every year, like our annual event's steadily grown. Last year, we had over 2,500 people.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and they come from several states away. And again, I think it just shows it's not making a community necessarily. It's a community that's already been there, and you're shining a light on the community that's already been there. And I think that kind of goes back to what Eula was doing. Like, this community was already here. They had a need. She was just shining a light on that need and making that known.
You're doing the same thing with Pikeville Pride.
Well, thank you.
So thank you. I had the chance to go to Pikeville Pride this last year. The whole time I was like, I am so glad that this exists. I am so glad that this exists in Pike County, in Eastern Kentucky, in Appalachia. It's beautiful, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any parting words you'd like to say about Eula?
Oh, gosh. Probably so many. I mean, again, just having that personal touch with Eula, like, I wouldn't say I know her, but I feel like everybody knows Eula. I mean, even if you weren't necessarily a patient at Mud Creek Clinic, you know somebody that was. And I think when Eula has been talked about, it's, again, just been about like the healthcare and the amazing thing that she did with that. But this woman did so much. And I think that that's part of her legacy that doesn't get talked about, is just how much she did and how much she's inspired not only my work, but I'm sure your work and the work of many other activists and advocates in Eastern Kentucky and Central Appalachia.
And how radical she was.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially a woman, coming from that era, being born, I think she was born 1927. She lived till she was 93. And I was going to the clinic and Eula was in her 80s and still working. Like, this woman could not be stopped.
No. One thing I do want to add to this conversation, they did burn down her original clinic.
Yes.
She refused to stop.
Refused to stop, yes.
She refused to stop. And that is amazing. If someone burned down what I was working on, I feel like I would crumble.
Yeah.
She refused to stop serving patients. She had a picnic table that survived the fire. And she said, come to the picnic table. That's the new doctor's office.
Yeah.
They helped as much as they could. I think they eventually ended up going to an elementary school and taking care of people in the gym. She had made all these connections, had this huge community, was able to get a grant through the Appalachian Regional Commission. With these grants, you have to have a huge match.
Yeah. It was like $320,000 grant, but they had, of course, had to match that.
But she did it in less than 90 days.
Yeah. Soup bean dinners is what I've heard. Her literally standing on the highway with a bucket and just being like, come put money in this. This is what we're doing, again, because the building burnt down. But another thing that I don't think we got to touch on, I do want to mention is, of course, her starting the clinic was in a trailer, abandoned trailer on a piece of property. She actually mortgaged her house because the need was so severe because they're seeing so many patients in this tiny trailer. She mortgaged her house, moved her family out of her house. So it was like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and put the clinic in her brick home, just in order to meet the need of having more patients and having more space. So, I mean, this woman literally moved her whole family out. Might have been into that abandoned trailer they were using as the clinic. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I think that blows my mind too, that she uprooted her family just to help the community.
Eula Hall walked the walk.
Talk the talk.
She deserves all the mountain laurels we could possibly ever give her.
Yes, all the flowers, all the mountain laurels, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you'd like to learn more about Eula Hall's life and work, I highly recommend the book Mud Creek Medicine by Kiran Badrayu. Also, a quick editor's note. In this episode, we talked about Mud Creek Clinic being burned down by them or they. No one was actually ever charged with burning down the clinic, but the fire was widely believed to be an intentional act. Thank you for listening to Mountain Laurels Women of Appalachia. This podcast was produced and edited by me, Jessica Miles. Our artwork is created by Hayden Miles, and our theme music is produced by Kenny and Hayden Miles. If you'd like to support this show, you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Mountain Laurels Podcast. Your support would be so appreciated, and we have stickers, so go check that out. And please join me and my guest next week as we dive into the history of another woman that has shaped this region.